This podcast is brought to you by the Harman family of leading pro audio brands, including AKG, Crown, DBX, Digitech, JBL, Lexicon, and Soundcraft. Harman Professional Solutions. Hear the truth. Learn more at harman.com.
Hey, it's Larry Crane. Welcome to the Atop podcast. His group, rolled out some funky dance pop in the 80s. He's produced big records for the Rolling Stones, Bonnie Raitt, John Mayer, and the B-52s. But today he is in his office, high atop the famous Capitol Records Tower in Hollywood, as president of the venerable jazz label Blue Note Records. How did Don Was get here? How does he approach production? What makes him tick? I knew someday we would have this discussion, and everything that drives him does stem from a true love of music, just as I had always imagined. Enjoy.
This audio recording was not originally tracked with the intent of using for a podcast. It was recorded solely for transcription for our print interview. Please forgive any balance issues, background sounds, or lack of clarity. Enjoy.
You know, I'm going to just go through a little quick history on you. We've never done an interview with you, and I think you got a fascinating story.
Thank you.
How does a bass playing kid in Detroit end up where you're at? And what were your first steps really towards being a producer, outside of being an artist?
Well, I suppose you can thank George Martin and the Beatles for making the recording process one of the instruments.
Yeah.
Other people, clearly Les Paul did that earlier, but in a way that spoke to me. I think it originated with them. And many people,
yeah.
And I was aware of production values, and I could hear, just the way you hear a musician hears certain nuances in playing that a non-musician would pick up on a record. I just heard it, so I was always fascinated by it. David who started Was Not Was with me. We his parents are both voiceover actors.
Oh, really?
So before we could drive, when we'd go down with them to recording studios and watch them. His dad actually did the Sunday at Detroit Dragway, but he did it for the whole nation. He fill in the blank of all the dragways. But it's a very iconic 1960s radio commercial.
That's awesome.
And so we'd watch him record, and just being in the studio, man, it was magical.
Yeah.
And I just always wanted to be in those rooms. There's something about the big mic stands with the mics and the wires everywhere, and the acoustically treated walls, and all the people sitting around in a circle playing together. It just looked like the most romantic, coolest place to be.
Right.
And it fucking is.
I believe you. I know.
And sitting here at 63 years old, I can tell you the romance of it has never worn off, man. There's not a day that goes by that I really don't feel privileged, to be in the studio. I just got to work at Fame Studios for the first time.
Oh, cool.
Russell Shoals. Producing a Greg Allman record, which was just an amazing experience. And when I pulled up to that place, I'd never been to Muscle Shoals.
Right.
When I pulled up to the building, I started crying, man. Just before I even went inside. Just something about it's at this anonymous-looking intersection with a Chick-fil-A and a CVS. but life-changing stuff came out of this just this normal looking building.
Yeah.
And then you walk in and you see the pictures of everybody up there, and that the room is fundamentally unchanged from 1972. Right. And and to sit in Rick Hall's chair behind the board and be there for 10 days and actually be doing sessions.
Yeah.
I don't think a minute went by when I took that for granted. I was really grateful for the opportunity. Last week, we recorded some songs on Sweet Pea Atkinson for Blue Note at a studio called Electrovox. You know this place?
I've heard of that. Yeah.
It's LA's oldest studio.
Right.
A guy named Woody Jackson.
Yeah. We were talking about him yesterday.
It's amazing, man.
I gotta go down
it
there.
looks the same as it looked in 1939, and Charlie Parker cut there.
Oh, jeez.
And they used to. It's across the street from the Paramount lot.
Right.
And Paramount used to be RKO, and so they did the radio like the transcription broadcasts.
Right.
And they'd run it across the street and they broadcast it off the lacquer. Right.
Yeah.
So it looks fundamentally the same, and it's a great old Universal Audio console, and for both Greg's album and the Sweet Pea thing we went to tape.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to get it so it didn't sound so literal and clean and modern, right? And we're A-Bing against this older stuff, and it hit me, man. Well, they were bouncing the tracks, man. So we took the rhythm tracks and bounced it down to a mono track through an old Gates compressor, and it's magnificent. It sounds so. It sounds like a record, And the guy who was the engineer did a great job. He said, "I'm taking great notes, so when you want to mix the song," I said, "What do you mean? We just mixed it. We made it. So we're gonna live with this, And I was just so excited. I was playing it all weekend, I was just thrilled, man. It lifted my spirits. Yeah. So it's just the great joy of my life is being able to make records. And I guess how it happens is you just pursue it relentlessly, mainly. Something. There are a lot of guys my age born in 1952.
Right.
A lot of musicians I know. Like an inordinate number of them. And I attribute that to the fact that when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan in 1964, we were 12 years old.
10, 12, yeah.
And that's just young enough to be dumb enough to say, I want to do that. And if you were younger, the screaming girls wouldn't have looked cool. And if you were older, you'd say, no chance of it. But at 12, you're just goofy enough to think.
Right.
And so really, I never had an alternative. I'm unskilled. I can't get a job anywhere. I couldn't. I have no other skills outside of this. So you just have to make it work.
Yeah.
that's how.
What was your first experience of going in to record in a studio? Was it with Was Not Was, or?
Well, it was really before that. Although it was probably Recording Institute of America, but it was an earlier incarnation of it. I don't remember what it's called, but they taught a class in Detroit at United Sound on the old Flickinger.
Right.
And so I took the class. I was in my early 20s, and it gave me some idea of so each of these modules, they're all the same. You don't have to learn 90 different controls. Right? So I got the sense but I didn't really learn how to engineer, but I did come out of the class and con a guy named Jack Tan who owned a little studio into thinking I could engineer. And I started engineering sessions, and you learn through trial by fire.
Right.
And the very first session I did do was it was like $10 an hour for the studio, and the band that came in was called the Amalgamated Funk Corporation, and the lead singer of that band was Harry Bowens, who was one of the lead singers in Was Not Was.
Right.
So that's how I met him. But we didn't do a Was Not Was record probably for another 6-7 years. This is in the early to mid 70s.
Right. So you took the engineering first. At least worked your way up on that.
Yeah, well, that's how I got into a studio.
Yeah,
but I was a musician. I played piano bars and played bass and trios or any kind of gig I could find up until I was in my 30s in Detroit. I just knocked it. That's I earned a living on the bar circuit. Really.
Right.
And it was a great period of my life. I put playing in local bars up there with playing in any arena on earth.
Yeah.
It was a great period and really diverse period. I played with anyone who called me. I used to work with this folk singer named Ted Lucas in Detroit. And we had a conga player, and I played bass and a drummer. and somehow we got booked to open for Black Sabbath in Toledo at the Toledo Sports Arena, which was just a bunch of 14-year-old boys on speed. So when we came out, this racially mixed folk band at a Black Sabbath show, we lasted in the ring about a minute and a half before the drummer was bleeding too bad.
That sounds brutal.
It was great, man.
Man.
I got fond memories of it. Later became good buddies with Ozzy, So.
Oh man.
So that, but just anything any gigs I could do, and I'll still do it, man.
Well, you played on Brian Wilson's recent record too.
Yeah, I did play.
That's just a bass player.
Yeah, that was a trip, man. That was, I've known Brian for a long time.
Yeah.
And you can't name any record producers who were ever better than Brian Wilson. There are other great ones,
right.
but no one's ever really been better or made better records than he made. So it's beautiful, to watch him in action,
right,
and to take instruction from him, and actually just to see him in such good shape, and really be in command in the studio. It was great. It was a beautiful session.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Your documentary on him and the sessions for that were, I thought, really amazing. I mean, I remember when that came out, there was sort of a little bit of a resurgence of interest in Brian and the Beach Boys and all. And I thought that was just a really wonderful, sympathetic way to put the spotlight back on him and say, look.
Yeah, thank you, man. There was a sense, people here, like, I'm not talking about musicians or record makers, but just music fans. They hear people say, oh yeah, Brian Wilson, he's a genius.
Right.
And if you put on Surfin' Safari, you might scratch your head and go, I mean, it's a good record, but why is this guy, so I thought, let's focus on his music and let's actually explain to people why he's, arguably the greatest genius in rock and roll history. And so I think it was a good layman's introduction to Brian.
And that was really nice to get him in the studio and be tracking those songs like that to see how he would react, because he just blooms when he's around music, as you know.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. I mean, that movie was shot over the course of a month. Not every day, but there was a couple of weeks went by, and we'd shoot him some more. And just being around some action and making some music that sounded good, you can see his spirits completely alter by the end of the movie. I mean, he's speaking differently, more confidently, and he comes to life when you're making music.
It sure looks like it.
Actually, there are a lot of guys that don't like that. We used to. There's a cattle tick that hangs in a tree and lowers its metabolism to one step above death. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have much free will. The only thing it does is it can sense when a cow is walking directly under it.
Really?
And then can't really steer itself, but can let go.
Right.
Switch it to full metabolism, drop on the cow, and get in under the cow's skin and then do whatever ticks do, But I know a lot of musicians like that who lower their metabolism to just above death until it's time to go out and play. And, and then they come to life.
Well, as a musician, there's that excitement, that buzz.
There's nothing like it, man.
Yeah.
We just we played a Was Not Was gig about 3 weeks ago.
Mm.
And
fun.
We hadn't played in 10 years.
Right.
But I've been playing, most of it was the original guys. And been standing on the same spot in the same band setup since, since the 80s.
Right.
We played our first gig together as a band in 1980, and we still set up the same on stage, and it's still the same cast. And man, it feels like home. Even if 10 years go by, and we didn't even have to rehearse much because muscle memory plays the songs. You remember the songs, you know how they go, and it was wonderful. But it's also, you see bands that have been around for a while. Guys have been standing on their spot on the stage layout longer than they've been married.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, you've worked with, there's a lot of artists or legacy artists that you've worked with over the years in the Stones. Just repeatedly come up, and we've done sessions with them and the reissues like recently.
Yeah.
What is it that keeps you working with them?
I keep going with them because they're the greatest band in the world. They're extraordinarily great.
Yeah.
And I've had the privilege of being able to play bass. Sometimes if Daryl Jones isn't around, I'll play. And I played on some of the records and just filled in for Daryl on some rehearsals and stuff.
Right.
And it took that to fully grasp the magnitude of the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The level of interplay, the listening and the feeding of ideas, the musical conversation is it goes so deep in the Rolling Stones, and it's jocular. It's fun. It's fun to play in the Rolling Stones, and they listen intensely, and they're constantly feeding each other ideas and bouncing off. And it's a really vivid musical experience. It's really alive, and there are good bands that are out there, but to get that thing where it becomes a living organism, that's pretty rare. I'll put them. I'll put them up there with like the Miles Davis quintet of the '60s with Herbie and Wayne and Ron Carter and Tony Williams, as far as having a language that they speak together, a musical language that just flows and rolls and and touches people.
Yeah,
they're a great musical aggregation, and I'm supremely honored to have been able to spend all this time with them.
Yeah,
and work with them for so long. And
do you find yourself mediating between?
Well, you find yourself mediating between. That's what a producer does,
right?
But it's not. I think there's a certain DNA code that runs through all bands.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain archetypes of band behavior.
Yeah.
And in many ways, they're not that different from the band I was in sixth grade, where there was tremendous disagreement. Actually, that band was way worse than the Stones. We were meaner.
With less at stake.
And people quit. That's the thing about the Stones. No one wants to walk out the door, but we kept quitting our band all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that there's a certain dynamic, and if you make records for a long time and you're a halfway compassionate person, you just understand that if you treat musicians with the respect that you'd like to be treated with, most of the problems go away. It's only when people feel like they're not being heard and they're being treated in a disrespectful fashion that problems occur.
Yeah.
So I dig being in the studio with the Stones. It never gets old. We did some stuff in December.
Yeah.
Which I can tell you because Ronnie Wood's already talked about it. Normally I'm not supposed to break the news.
Oh, absolutely.
But, it's been discussed. So
word gets out too easily these days.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Now, I think Ronnie tweeted it. It's on his Instagram. But it never gets old. I just sit there and look at who's in the room, and it's incredible. And when they start playing and they get that sound, there's nothing like it. And the way we set them up is kind of like the stage.
Yeah.
Very similar to the stage. So they're all playing together. And it's pretty amazing.
Do you find that's an important thing with a lot of musicians? Like maybe they've got, say, a legacy act, like especially maybe by the time you're working with them, they've been forced into working in ways that weren't compatible.
I think that can happen.
Yeah.
Look, the records of guys like Max Martin and Dr. If I knew how to do that, I would do it. I have tremendous respect for them as record makers and as artists who know how to communicate with large numbers of people.
Right.
That's a great skill, and a gift, and they're really good at it. And so I have no attitude at all about how they want to go about making it. I got no judgment at all about people who sit in front of a computer and layer things up by typing it in. You know, that's a way to do it, you know, and it's a great way to do it. And people have made some incredible records with that method. But personally, I get supercharged out of having a bunch of people sitting around in a circle in a room and not worrying about whether the mics are bleeding into other mics. In fact, encouraging bleed through, and it actually sounds better when you have as much drums in the vocal mic as you have vocal. There's a great drum sound.
Something that happened.
Yeah. So I prefer that. You know, if you can do it without headphones, even better. You know, it's hard to do, but I try to get it as real and put as few barriers between people as possible. Whenever you can, you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes, you know, if it requires that you work with people who can get through a take without fucking up.
When you work with a solo artist like someone like Iggy Pop or someone like, are you looking at that like putting a band together to serve the means?
Yeah, I think I think casting for the songs is just like directing a movie. Casting, you know, if you get the right musicians for the songs, and it might be that if you're doing an Iggy album, not every song requires the same guys. Right. You know, depends on the song. But if you cast the song properly, it's a lot easier to make a good record. And casting involves not only people who play well, but people who listen. I'm more concerned about that. I think it's really important to pay attention to the singer and find ways to be supportive and allow to support, but also allow room for full interpretation. Yeah. You hear some records where you know the singers weren't there when they cut the track. You just hear it, and you hear really great singers sound like they've been stuffed into a little cage, a phrasing cage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not like a nice cage. It's like what they do to veal. And that I don't understand. I always love it when, you know, let's say I've assembled a studio band for a singer, and I'll pass out, you know, chord charts to everybody. But I really like the guys who say, "Let me see the lyrics." Yeah, you know, how can you play the fucking song if you don't know what it's about? You know, if you're not paying it, it's not really about the chords. It's about the emotional context. So I'll watch for that, and that's a sign that you're working with the right people when they want to. Yeah. You hold on to the chords. Let me see the lyrics. That's my favorite thing to hear.
It's true. It's you know, I mean, I've heard a great musician ask the writer, you know, what's this about? How am I supposed to feel? Yeah. Exactly. It's so important.
Yeah. And great singers really get into it too. You know, Mick Jagger and I do that a lot. We'll talk about what's happening in the sentence. Is he sad? Is he wistful or sad, or is he angry here? Well, and you know what really one of the things Mick Jagger did that I thought was incredible. I'm trying to think of which song it was. I know it was a song on Bridges to Babylon called "Anybody Seen My Baby." It's a hit single. Yeah. And we had that discussion. Is he mad or is he wistful here? And Mick said, "Hold on," and he had a notebook where he wrote an essay about what happened leading up to where the song begins and what happens after the song ends. Wow. Get prose written. Yeah. And so it had a real story to it. Even if the listeners didn't know about the backstory or what was coming after the you know, after 4.5 minutes, what happens then? By him knowing, he was able to infuse it with more meaning, and I think that's why it was a single. You know?
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
It was cool. It was a very impressive thing. Perhaps one time, Richie Sambora and I made a record. He's a
Right.
buddy of mine. We made a record together in the 90s. And it was in the Bon Jovi vein. It was guitar driven. And we heard about a movie that Jerry Bruckheimer was making that was looking for a ballad. So we drove over to see him. The movie was Con Air. So we played him the song, and he said, look, it's a really good song. I understand why you think it's great. I'm sure it's great for some movie. It's not for my movie. I've got this Celine Dion song temped in here, and they won't let me use it. But I don't know who refused, but he couldn't use the song. And it's all synthesizers. And it was a ballad, but it was the musically, texturally, it was the 180 degrees from where Richie was. Huh? So we said, we want this song to be in this movie so badly, we're going to go back and rework the record to match this. And Richie and I stayed up for 3 days. And when we did it, we replaced everything with keyboards and we tried to get the sounds that Jerry Bruckheimer liked. And then it came time for Richie to do his vocal. And I said, all right, we're going to try something here. Just so this is so in sync when you put it into the movie. Is a thing I saw Francis Coppola do. I worked on a movie with Francis Coppola, and I had the privilege of being able to sit on the set with him and sit right next to him for like a week. It was The Rainmaker was a movie. And then ask him questions. He was just so, it was like a dream, man.
Yeah.
So one of the techniques I saw him do was have the actors act out the 5 minutes leading up to where the scene, improvise the thing, you get into the character, and then start the dialogue when you're complete. So you're not going from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
So I said, we're going to do the same thing. You're going to be Nicolas Cage, and I'll be John Cusack, and we're going to improvise the whatever time it takes leading up to the scene.
Right.
And then when you're in character, we're going to do the vocal. And when you do the vocal, look at the screen and be Nicolas Cage. And it was fucking great, man. It was the best. It was the best vocal on the record, and it was amazing, and it matched so well. So, like I said, we've been up for 3 days, and then we stayed up. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, and we drove over to meet Jerry Bruckheimer, like ambush him as he was coming into work. And he was cool. He saw us. He was amused by our condition, and he played it, and he said, "All right." He said, "I got to hand it to you. You've done a really good job, and you really did cop the feeling of the Celine Dion, and it really does match the thing." Said, "It's just not right for my movie." And we sat there. We're pretty out of our skulls, right? We said, "All right, man, you got 3 weeks to wrap the movie. There's no way you're going to find a song, but we're going to wait you out." And of course, the song he got was what's it called? I'll think it won the Oscar anyway. It was a Diane Warren song. That Trisha Yearwood. "How Can I Live Without You?"
Yeah. Oh my God.
Trisha Yearwood had a hit with it, and Leanne Rimes had a hit with it.
Jeez.
And it was, so waiting them out wasn't necessarily the best strategy. However, I stand by the technique of improvising the 5 minutes before the song starts.
Right. Were you like acting out, or you doing
We were
dialogue?
acting out. Yeah, it was just me and Richie in the house. We were at my house up in Mulholland. I had a studio there.
Yeah.
And it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Once I said it, I really regretted it because I thought, "Oh fuck, this is now I gotta like just abandon all self-consciousness and risk being a shitty actor." But we did it, and he sang the fuck out of it too.
I love that. Well, I mean, singing is emotional, but it's also a bit of acting. So it's like
it's storytelling.
Hand in hand, you're running that acting into singing. It makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. You don't have to be lying. I think of something like Bonnie Raitt, where half the songs we recorded she didn't write.
Right.
But she only recorded songs that pertained to her life at that moment.
Yeah.
And that she could have written. And in doing so, it was very easy to infuse it with the truth.
You wouldn't listen to those records and think they were disingenuous or something.
No, you would not. And they weren't. I saw her turn down songs that were hit records. She said, I can't sing that now. I'm not going to. This is my life. That's not like reality.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a hit. Okay.
And with her stuff, with Nick of Time, how did that job come to you? That was kind of one of your earlier, bigger successes.
Yeah, that's my first real one. Doing Nick of Time and Love Shack with the B-52s.
Right.
They were done like a month apart.
Wow.
Back to back, and I went from being a pariah to having gigs.
Right. Was it had a bit.
Yeah, we had some success.
A bit of acclaim, but you'd also run into obstacles with Geffen and such too.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. And I was always a huge Bonnie Raitt fan. There are other good singers around, but I don't know anyone who's better than Bonnie Raitt, man. To this day, I get choked up listening to her sing. She just really has a way of cutting through both your physical skin and your emotional skin and getting deep inside you. And not just to me, but clearly for millions of people. She's an amazing artist, always was.
Yeah.
And I was just really excited to meet her. And we hit it off, and we did a song for a guy named Hal Wilner, who kind of invented the tribute album, but used to do these really eclectic ones.
Exactly.
So he was doing a Disney one.
Oh yeah.
And we did a version of Baby Mine from Dumbo, and we just got on well. I just feel really close to her. I think we come out of the same period, the same milieu, and so we just thought, well, let's do more stuff. She didn't have a record deal at the time, and we started doing the demos for Nick of Time in the basement of my house. And
were you working with Ed Cherney from the beginning or that on some of that stuff?
Yeah, I didn't know him before then.
Yeah.
But Raitt Cooder had recommended Ed to Bonnie.
Ah, nice.
And the three of us just clicked. And it was a real triumvirate. The sound of that record, which was at the time was quite different than everything else that was going on.
Right.
It was a weird combination. We had three really different things in mind, and I was hearing something dark like Joshua Tree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bonnie was hearing something unaffected and pretty clean, like the record she had made, and Ed was hearing something that had a little more polish. He was just coming off a stint of doing records with Quincy Jones.
Right, which gives you informs you in a whole different way.
So we would disagree about how the mixes should sound.
Yeah.
And Ed landed on a way of pleasing both of us, of keeping it sounding. It sounds real and unaffected, but there's actually quite a bit of engineering going on.
Yeah.
And he did some brilliant mix things, but he didn't make it huge.
Right.
It's just tighter delays, and it's just a more subtle use of the outboard gear.
Yeah.
That creates the feeling of intimacy, but still has some polish.
Right.
So it made it a very accessible sounding record for people.
Right. You compare it to her earlier work, it is a different tone.
It's a different tone.
Yeah.
But none of that would have mattered were it not for, how great Bonnie is, and she was at a moment in time where she had gone through this transformation of getting sober, and having to confront feelings as opposed to drown them.
Right.
And this is the first record she made like that. And there's a whole lot of real deep stuff that came out. And that's really what characterized it.
Yeah.
More than anything, I think.
And connected with so many people, obviously.
Yeah.
And you were some of the Cosmic Thing album, you were producing those tracks at the same time or around then?
Yeah, I did them back to back. One was like in August, one was in September. That was just fun. I loved the B-52s.
Yeah.
And,
I always think that's a Nile Rodgers record. He did.
But he did half.
You got about half each, right?
Yeah.
But you did Love Shack.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a huge hit for them.
That's probably the biggest single I ever had. I think I've been accounted to on like 6 or 7 million singles on that one. So,
Yeah.
So
That's crazy.
Yeah. They're great. They're a great band, and they would write in a very unique way. They play a groove, and it always reminded me the basic groove of Love Shack is kind of like Cool Jerk by the Capitals a little bit, you know? And so it had that kind of thing to it. And then they would just play this groove, and the three singers would improvise,
Right?
and they just jam on it for 45 minutes, and they'd tape it, and then they'd write down all the cool lines, and then they'd have these lists. Everyone kept a list of the cool lines that they sang.
Right.
So there were 3 lists, and go like ceiling to floor, and just be hop in my Chrysler, it's about to set sail.
Yeah.
And then there was no context to it, and that wasn't really a song that we intended to record, but we finished early.
Right.
The ones that we intended to record. And they said, well, we got this one other thing, but it's like 15 minutes long. We don't know what to do with it. And nothing ever repeated. So they asked me to edit it. And it just seemed like, all right, well, this thing about the Love Shack, this is like, maybe this is the thing that holds together. It's a tenuous glue. Yeah. And so we just sat there and we cut it down to 3.5 minutes from 15 and made this the chorus.
Right.
And we went out to cut it, and it was the first take. First take was great, except when we got to the "Your tin roof rusted" part, which, you know, God knows what it means. But Cindy infused it with so much meaning and emotion that everyone was kind of startled. And we came in, we didn't come back in right. Okay, so it fell apart there because it was like, whoa, what was it? Just so we tried it another 30 times. We tried it all day long. We just kept cutting it, and we'd get worse, and we'd lose the groove of the thing. It wasn't. This was before Pro Tools. Yeah. And we went out to dinner. We were kind of depressed, and we went back to. Someone said, "Wait, let's listen to the first take again." So we put that on. And then we heard it fall apart, but we had all stopped. Your tin roof rusted. So we just punched in after we went back to the first take, punched in after your tin roof rusted, and Love Shack, baby, and we just did the vamp out. It was an easy solution,
fix.
Yeah. But I hadn't had the depth of experience to think of it at the time.
Yeah.
So it was an almost improvised moment, but.
They bring so much energy to it. The singing. Great. I mean, it just makes it fun.
Yeah. But again, a great chemistry between those 4 principals. Charlie Drayton was playing drums. He was great.
Oh, yeah.
That made a big difference.
Were you able to pick the backing players for that record?
Yeah. Well, Sarah Lee, I think, had been playing. They lived in Woodstock.
Yeah.
She'd been playing with Gang of 4. She went to high school with my wife.
No way.
Had some history there. But.
You produced like a wide variety of styles.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that people don't know you for is country and country as songwriter like Christopherson.
Oh yeah.
Type production as well.
I like all kinds of music.
Yeah.
So truthfully, I don't know any musicians who sit there and think, I think I'll play an R&B line. Oh, now I'll play a country lick. You don't think, musicians don't think of categories; they just play.
No.
And so, I mean, categories are good for organizing the iTunes store and that kind of thing. Or you want to keep track of your records at home.
Record stores.
Yeah.
If they still exist.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's like a Dewey Decimal System, but the author's not thinking, should I write a 900 book or a 600?
Yeah.
So the style doesn't matter much. What matters is that it's infused with some real feeling and that it's communicative.
Yeah.
So that, I personally find Willie Nelson to be as expressive as John Coltrane.
Sure.
Especially in the case of Willie, I mean, the way his phrasing is so inventive.
Yeah.
And
always changing the soul. I've gone to see him over and over, and I'm like, different solo every
all
night.
the time. I just played with him 2 weeks ago. He was on fire, man. He was great. He's the only guitar player in his band now.
Really?
So he's stretching out more, and he's really playing well.
Wow.
Like he was like Hendrix the other night. Man. We played a gig in Nashville a couple of weeks ago. It was a tribute for Christopherson. Chris was there,
yeah.
And we're doing Sunday morning coming down, and he took an extended solo on it. I was like, "Whoa, man, this is deep," you know. And he has that same. There's a conversation going on. He'll play off of you do something, he'll react to it.
Yeah.
He is like a jazz musician. He's just using different modes.
I've seen him baffle his backing bands a couple of times.
Yeah, he'll fuck with you too. You know, he'll pull a phrase back so far that it's into the next line. You know, and if you don't know where one is, you're fucked. He challenges your knowledge of the location of one on a regular basis. Yeah,
and producing someone like Willie, it's got to be real interesting to figure out
great, man.
what he wants to do on this album and where he wants to go with it.
Yeah, I made a number of records with him, and he's always himself. The most interesting thing that I found was I only saw him get upset once, and that was when he came into the room to hear a playback, and his guitar was down in volume and his vocal was up, and he couldn't understand why the engineer didn't get that they were the same thing. His guitar playing and his vocal, it's all part of one performance.
Right.
And why would it'd be like having a fader that turns down all the consonants?
You just killed half of everything.
But he's a great artist. Christopherson's a great artist, man. You know, a couple of Merle Haggard, a couple of George Jones.
Right.
Conway Twitty. I produced Conway Twitty's last session.
Everybody's got a very distinctive style, way of phrasing, singing, and everything.
Yeah. I had a band once. Started a band with Ringo.
Yeah.
and we got Ben Montench playing organ. A guy named Mark Goldenberg, a guitar player who played with Jackson Browne for years, was playing guitar. And a singer out of Nashville named Jonelle Mosser. And we wanted to get a guy singer too, but we were having trouble. We wanted to go out and make a record and tour, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to think. First we called Delbert McClinton, and he was like really. Oh, we called Levon Helm first.
Wow. Yeah.
And he just didn't show up. so we called Delbert, and Delbert was like in Japan, and Lyle Lovett came in and played.
Wow.
And but Lyle couldn't. It was busy, you know, doing his own shows.
Sure.
So we were trying to think of who the guy was, and I had a dream about Merle Haggard singing in the band. Right? So through Willie's manager, Mark Rothbaum, he connected me with Merle, and we went up to his place, and we cut some stuff. Benmont and I still can't believe we were present for this, you know, to be in a room playing live with Merle Haggard and Ringo Starr.
Yeah, right.
And it's fucking amazing. It never came out, but man, it was great. We got a version of "Born to Lose" that's floating. I don't even think I have it here with me. But,
man,
it was mesmerizing to like record with those guys. Just to visually to see it happen.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It is crazy the number of things that never do get released for various reasons. You know, sessions that don't.
Well, sometimes getting it released isn't your primary intention. It's just getting it out of your system, man.
Yeah.
You know, like you got all the stuff pent up. Commerce doesn't always walk hand in hand with music.
Here we are in the tower saying this too. I mean,
well, that was a big deal in taking this gig here, man.
Yeah.
You know, it was the idea of working at Blue Note Records was absolutely irresistible.
Yeah.
But the idea of working at a record company, to be honest with you, was anathema. You know, it was, to me, the record company they were the guys who came in and fucked up your records, told you the wrong things to do, and then if it worked, they stole your money. That's how I. So I never wanted to, I wanted to minimize my exposure to record companies, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But the chance to be part of Blue Note, which has meant so much to me since I was a teenager, I couldn't pass by. And I'm really glad I didn't.
And they were thinking of maybe even kind of ceasing the label at that point.
Here's what happened. I was in New York. I was working with John Mayer, recording Born and Raised.
An Electric Lady? Or?
At Electric Lady, yeah. And we had a night off. We took a Tuesday night off because he had a private gig that basically paid for the whole album.
Good deal.
Yeah. And so with my night off, I went up to a club that's almost all the way up in Harlem on the west side. And I saw this guy, Gregory Porter, amazing singer. And he'd made one independent record that I just loved. And I couldn't believe it. So I went to the gig and I sat there for 3 sets and just ate ribs and drank coffee and had the best time, man. And the next morning, I was having breakfast with an old buddy of mine, a guy named Dan McCarroll, who I knew was a drummer. He was playing with Sheryl Crow and Lloyd Cole and the Commotions. At that point, he was the president of Capitol Records. He's now president of Warner Brothers Records.
Right.
And we were just buddies, so we were talking about other stuff. And at the end of the breakfast, I said, "Is Blue Note Records still part of Capitol? Because if it is, you should sign this guy." I saw that. I signed Gregory Porter. Well, totally unbeknownst to me, man. That was the week they were trying to decide what to do with Blue Note Records. And with Bruce Lundvall retiring, there didn't seem to be a vision for how you move the company forward. And they were thinking, well, maybe we just close it down, turn it into a website that sells catalog and Blue Note T-shirts and call it a day.
Yeah.
But Dan wasn't comfortable with that. Roger Faxon, who was the CEO of EMI at the time, he wasn't comfortable with it. So I showed up with an idea and they offered me the job. Just like that, man. So it was irresistible. And what I did learn was that for the most part, the people who work at record companies actually love music and love the musicians, would lay down their lives for the musicians.
Yeah.
Are willing to stay here till 10, 11 o'clock at night for people artists they maybe haven't even met, don't even know personally, but they're so devoted to it that they're willing to stay here to make sure that people get to hear it. Now, I was very moved to see that, the dedication of the people who work here. And I'm not saying that it's not a constant battle to reconcile artistry and commerce.
Right.
But a weird thing happened to me as a producer. Overall, the sum total of my experience was that the more I didn't pay attention to commerce and just made records from the heart or helped artists make records from the heart, the more successful they were. And every time I entered into a somewhat cynical attempt to do something commercial, it flopped.
Right.
And all the records that were hits were records that were kind of defied the trend of the moment, but they got through to people because there was something real going on with the artists.
Right.
So the business plan was just try to make really great records and hope that a good percentage of them connect with people. And I think you can carry that over into the record company.
Yeah.
When it becomes your responsibility to connect with people, the conventional wisdom used to be that 9 out of 10 records stiffed.
Right.
And I'm not too comfortable when it's my responsibility. I mean, I really know how hard it is. Like if you start counting from the moment that an artist starts writing songs, and you think of how hard it is to write a song, how you got to bleed to write something that rings true.
Yeah.
And it might take you a year just to write the songs, and that's before you start thinking about how to record them, and then going through all the recording, and then all the mastering and the A-Bing. Well, I don't know. I think we need another 0.3 dB at 10K on just on track 2.
Yeah.
I mean, so you go through all that and the cover art and all the interviews and then to have your record company drop the ball, that's just not acceptable. And to be honest with you, it's happened to me a whole. Way too often as a record producer.
Right.
And sometimes it happens, sometimes things just don't come together. And I take that real hard as the president of a record company. I don't like doing that. And so we try really hard not to drop the ball on anybody. It doesn't mean every record's going to connect with people, but every record should have the opportunity for people to decide if the music means something to them or not.
Right.
I was concerned about right brain versus left brain. I do have to actually think about the budgets and the profit and loss on everything, and I do have to think. I don't have to sit there, be a lawyer and negotiate the contracts, but I got to know what's in the contracts. And I was afraid that I was going to deactivate the creative parts of my brain. You know, you got to you can open up previously dormant synapses, but you're going to only have so many synapses firing at once, right? So you shut down things that you're not using.
Yeah.
So I had no need to ever look at a spreadsheet. Ever, you know. And I was kind of looking forward to like closing out the rest of my life without ever like going near a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But I got to do it now, and I got to know what these things mean. And so something had to close down. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to ever. I thought, all right, I'll take this gig. It'd be cool, be a fun adventure. But I have the feeling I'm never going to write a song again.
Yeah, right.
But what I try to do is play as often as I can.
Yeah.
I got a couple great gigs coming up this month. Like
that sounds fun.
We're playing in the New Orleans, during the New Orleans Jazz Festival.
Nice.
We're doing this thing. We're recreating the Last Waltz at the Sanger Theater. We put a band together. It's Warren Haynes, Michael McDonald's going to play piano, John Medeski, Jamie Johnson, Terrence Higgins in a horn section. I'll play bass. That's a great gig and a wonderful theater.
Those bass lines are a treat, right?
Incredible. Well, some of them, George Porter Jr. is going to play some of the funkier ones.
Oh yeah, right.
Down, you know, but we're going to trade off.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, so try to do that as often as I can.
You're making time for producing other things that are outside of Blue Note?
Yeah, not as many, you know, but Greg Allman, I'm producing. We started a Stones record. Maybe we'll finish it. Maybe we won't. I don't know. And I do, you know, I just produced this Dr. Lonnie Smith record that's that came out. I produced Robert Glasper, and I produced like kind of an all-star band of Blue Note artists. It's Robert and Marcus Strickland on sax, Ambrose Akamusiri on trumpet, Derek Hodge on bass, Kendrick Scott on drums, Lionel Luecki on guitar.
Wow, that sounds
It's really a great record, man. We cut it down in capital A.
Right.
And it's really good. It's a great band, you know. So that'll come out later this year.
Yeah. Is it pretty crazy working at a label that's got studio facilities?
It's
at its disposal.
First time I did a record here with an office in the building.
Yeah.
I thought, of course, that's why they do it. It's so great, man. You have your office, you get in the elevator, and you're at the studio, man. You don't no traffic, no nothing. You go back up if you take a break and take care of business. And the people from the company can come down and hear it, and you get everyone off. You play it for the radio guys. Yeah, come on down, check. So it's great having a studio in the building, and especially that studio.
Right.
That's another one that you never take for granted. The experience never gets old.
Right.
It's the ghosts living in the walls are vivid,
right,
you know, and present, and you can feel it, and they're good.
Yeah. I was really curious about the Stones reissues. The first two were where you were revisiting tracks that weren't finished and stuff. I was really fascinated by how to get in the mindset of X amount of decades ago, and how the process worked for you guys doing that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I wasn't there the first time.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to get back in that mindset.
Yeah, to get them. Well, I mean, to get the band kind of thinking about it fresh again. But.
There were times that they were able to. For the most part, there were things that were finished.
Right.
Except maybe they didn't have final vocals, or he never finished writing the songs. So Keith did some things where it just needed something to sound like a record, but it wasn't too hard for him to lock into what he was doing. And you could certainly lock into the sound of it. Mick can lock into the sound of it, but doesn't always want to. I think he liked the idea of being who he is today, revisiting the songs rather than trying to fool people.
Right.
I think he saw it as a more sincere way of approaching it. So the first one was Exile, right?
Yeah.
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 Particularly on that one. I tried, because I know he can do it, or he can sound just like the guy who's singing Tumbling Dice if he wants to.
Right.
We got the same mics, and we did the whole thing, and the same everything. But it was, I think he felt it was disingenuous to pretend to be the guy.
Right.
And that's what he didn't want to do, was try to trick people into thinking that these were, oh, look, we found some finished records.
Right.
He wanted to be very straightforward about the fact that they were tracks that were left over and that he was going to finish them, but let's not fool people by it, which I commend him for. So it's this weird mixture. I quite liked it.
Yeah.
Stuff,
Yeah.
And the Some Girls tracks, I think those were a little further along. That required less things. And the Sticky Fingers, there's just nothing left. The Sticky Fingers, basically, anything that was left over from, if there was stuff left over from Let It Bleed, it ended up on Sticky Fingers. If there was stuff left over from Sticky Fingers, it ended up on Exile. If there was stuff left over from Exile and it didn't get absorbed into Tattoo You, we used it on the Exile reissues. So the periods sort of overlap.
Oh yeah.
And we had really depleted. There's stuff, but it's just blues jamming, and there just wasn't anything that was worth building on top of.
Right.
There are periods where there are 2 whole albums.
Oh man.
What's the one? Emotional Rescue.
Oh wow.
There's all kinds of stuff from that. The stuff I did on Virgin, man. There's at least one album of all of those 3 Virgin studio albums.
Unfinished, unreleased.
Yeah. That are good, man. That are really good. That we had to make hard choices to leave them off. Yeah. And we said, we'll use them on the next one. And you never use them on the next one.
Right.
So they're sitting there. So there are more fertile periods, but I think that's it. I think what they did with Sticky Fingers was really cool. Yeah. The live stuff.
Oh, that's fun.
But it was fun going back. It was really fun going through, listening to hundreds of hours of outtakes from Exile.
Wow.
And you really get a feel for what went on. That was a real. That was being a theologian, listening to and getting the Dead Sea Scrolls at your house for a couple of years to mess around
with such a loose recording scenario and the amount of stuff that was obviously rolled, to get to where they went and then edited down to be the album. Yeah, that's the most fascinating little snapshot there.
It's interesting to see. One of the things I found, it's not of the period, but it was lumped in with the tapes, was the evolution of Honky Tonk Women. So takes, it starting at Country Honk.
Right.
And then it not making it really for them, I guess. And they came in the next day, and Ian Stewart started doing this Honky Tonk piano.
Right. And
then they filled in around what he was playing on the piano, and on the last couple of takes, they took the piano out, and that's where all the angular guitar rhythms that comes in because they're playing around this other thing that was filling up all the space. So I always wish they would put that out as a CD, man. So just the evolution. How do they get there? It's just a fascinating documentary.
You see that in that Godard movie.
Yeah.
Where they're working on Sympathy for the Devil.
Yeah.
Exactly. Fascinating. It's like, go in there and play Shakers, Brian, and then Keith's going to play bass, and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah. It turns into the thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thanks for listening. Find us online at tapeop.com, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time.